Hey everyone, welcome back to LightHearted. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Britton. Today's episode is all about something that I think we've all experienced, and that is feeling hurt. Whether it's from a breakup, a lost opportunity, or even something somebody says to us, hurt really is a universal emotion.
But today we're not just talking about hurt, we're talking about turning hurt into healing. How do we take those difficult moments and use them to grow, move forward, and maybe even find something beautiful in the process?
I think it's just a really powerful topic because it is so universal. So we're going to be sharing our personal stories like we do, and some science-backed insights, and of course, our favorite practical tips to help you on your own healing journeys. All right, so before we can even talk about the healing, we have to acknowledge the hurt. And I think oftentimes that's the hardest part. So often we try to push pain away or pretend that it just doesn't exist because we want to keep the peace, or we just are good at sweeping things under the rug. But that just truly delays the healing process. So it's not that healthy.
Yeah. When we acknowledge the hurt, we're giving ourselves permission to feel it, to name it, which is such an important first step. Have you ever had a moment when you tried to ignore hurt and it came back to bite you?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I think every single human being has. Yeah. I think kind of like what I was saying earlier, where it's just like, I don't love like breaking the peace.
Yeah.
You know, but like at some point, like somebody kind of has to be the one to say something about whatever's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, mine always comes down to like relationships. You know, and it's like, because I love the people around me so much, I choose to not say things because like I want to keep the peace and I want to maintain friendships. I want to maintain familial relationships, mm-hmm. right? But at some point, like sweeping things under the rug, it just gets really exhausting.
Yeah.
And like the hurts are still there.
Yeah.
Even if you pretend they're not, like they're still there, and they still like come back, and often they come back stronger and meaner and uglier. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. So there were times like where I have totally just tried to ignore problems, mm-hmm. only for them to like keep creeping back up and keep creeping back up. And then like my whole world explodes for a few minutes. Right. Like, so it never ends well when I do that. No. So anytime I can like deal with the hurt and acknowledge that I'm hurting, or like let somebody know that I'm hurting, mm-hmm. then it often goes better.
Yeah. That's a good perspective. And I think I like how we think differently about questions, and how you're looking at it from a point of view of like dealing with hurt between people. Yeah. And where my perspective is actually dealing with just like personal hurt. So for me, a couple years ago, I was dealing with extreme guilt, and just I was struggling. I was in a really low point, and I was trying with everything in me to just ignore it and be like, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to get through it. Maybe this is just like a sad month and I'm just struggling. Although I knew deep down it was more than that. I was really having a hard time, and it just exploded on me. If I would have just told someone I was struggling sooner and just dealt with my emotions, it wouldn't have gotten so out of hand. But I was blowing up on everyone. I was making small situations into big situations. My skin was freaking out because of how stressed I was. Like, I have pictures of just like full acne, and it was literally because I was so stressed and like so much built up guilt. When I finally reached out for help, it was like, why didn't I do that sooner?
Yeah.
We can so often just try and push our feelings away because it is hard to confront them at first. Like that week of actually dealing with it was the hardest week because I was having to say the hard things and do the hard things.
And then people know,
and
like,
then people
what you're
know,
dealing
and
with,
it's
and that's
so
hard.
It's scary and it's stressful, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
So like say the hard things. When you need help, reach out, because otherwise, like, I was looking like a terrible person because I was being mean, and I was having meltdowns over things that I normally would not have meltdowns over. And it was like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, regardless of everyone else, why am I letting myself feel this way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like, it's a really popular quote where it's just like, choose your hard, where it's like, you can deal with this and it's going to be hard, or you can deal with this and it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So like, which one, like, do you want to be exploding on everyone around you, or do you want to like deal with the problem?
Yeah.
Like, but it's so crazy that like, oftentimes like how we're feeling inside really does manifest on the outside.
Right.
It's like, you're hurting the people around you. Your skin is mad at you, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not sleeping, whatever it is, like it shows.
Yeah.
Also, your skin's glowing now, so so she's healed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's cool that you were willing to choose the other hard.
Yeah.
So that you could get it all sorted out.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was well worth it.
Yeah. Love it. Like coming from the other side.
It's well worth it. It's always worth it. And the funny thing is, I've had that happen multiple times. So you would think that you would learn your lesson, but you don't. You just are like, no, I can deal with this. And it's like, no. Mm-mm. It's okay to ask for help.
It's good to ask for help.
You should ask for help.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I want to say, like, if you're the one asking for help a lot, like, make sure that you're also there to, like, be helpful to other people.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah. Yeah. And, like, and that's okay. And, like, we're all supposed to be here for each other.
Yeah. And making the people that you're asking, maybe you have to ask for help more than once and a few times. And because I have.
And
but
that's
making those people feel like what they're doing matters.
Yes.
Because so often we can be like, I don't want to do this. And you seem, whatever. And they can be like, well, why am I even helping you? It's hard. And typically if you're going to the right person, they'll know that anyway. But yeah. But I think it's so important to let us feel those emotions and deal with them. And it wasn't till I like sat down and actually let myself feel those emotions that I started to move forward.
Yeah. I think that's really, like, that's just a true fact of how things work.
Yeah.
And there is science to back this up, which I just love. I love when, like, there are these, like, universal truths that it's, like, also backed up by, like, 20 different sources. So research does show that when we're suppressing our emotions, it can increase our stress levels and it can make it harder to process what we're going through. Yeah. So if you can take a minute and acknowledge your hurt, that's like opening the door to let your feelings move through you instead of just, like, chilling, instead of just like wrecking your whole life.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's awesome. What are your best tips for like taking a minute to acknowledge that you're hurt? It's a hard one.
It is hard. I think the first thing is to name the emotion. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Sometimes just naming it, like sadness, anger, or even disappointment, can be such a relief.
Yeah. There's a giant wheel of emotions where like you can start with your small one where it's like, I'm feeling kind of sad. Okay. But that also makes me feel like this. And it kind of branches out from there. So we can probably link one of those.
Yeah.
Like it's just really helpful to like really narrow it down. Yeah. So I agree. One thing that I really like to do is that I will set a time limit on how long I'm allowed to be sad for. So I'll just be like, you know what? Like I'm feeling really upset about this thing and I'm going to be upset for 1 hour and I'm going to cry. And if I want to scream at something, like I can scream at the wall and like
a scheduled breakdown.
It is a scheduled mental breakdown.
Okay. So let's talk about this for a minute.
I would love to talk about
this. Have a conversation about this.
I could talk about this all day.
I love this. So I do this. Not necessarily like at the beginning of the week. I'm like, okay, on Tuesday at 2 p.m. I'm going to have a breakdown. That's not exactly how I do it. But it's like, my evenings are like, if I need to feel sad, I'm going to feel sad and I'm going to cry. And I have a group of people that I meet with weekly and we talk and we do different things. It's a Bible study and stuff. And I had a couple people like, I said that and they were like, what? Mind blown. What the heck? That's so weird. Of course, I'm one of the younger ones in the group. But I had one person, not going to call you out, say like, I don't get the point in crying. I don't get it. And I understand that. Everyone has a different perspective of like, crying doesn't do anything is kind of their point of view on that. And
it's like crying doesn't solve the problem.
Right. And I get it.
Yeah.
Crying is okay. And crying, like, and I didn't take offense to that at all because I got to sit and explain like why I think crying is beneficial in certain scenarios. And I'm going to bring one up right now. A couple weeks ago, I was really struggling. And in the evening, I was like, you know what? I'm feeling really sad and I don't know why I'm feeling sad. So I just started to get a little teary and I was like, no, it's okay. I'm allowed to cry. And I let myself cry. And then I started to cry more. And then it was opening up the door to like, oh, that's why I'm feeling this way. Like there was a lot of stuff behind my feelings of like, oh, okay, this is the root of why I'm feeling sad right now. Because I'm like, I'm feeling dread and I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that. And I'm like, why am I feeling all of this? And once I was crying about it, I started to like realize the root of the problem. And I sat there and I sobbed for like 30 minutes. But then the next morning I was like, oh, I felt so much better because I got all of that energy out.
Yeah. It's like you finally were like understanding yourself.
Yeah. And it made me realize like, okay, I'm not just crazy. I'm not just feeling this sense of dread for no reason. Like there's reasons behind it.
Yeah. Like you're not just being overly emotional.
No.
Like you needed to get something out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's awesome.
So it's okay to cry.
It's good to cry. And like that's actually a thing too, where it's like, it releases the emotions. That
it does.
Like it's a good thing to cry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're having trouble with that, like schedule a good cry sometime this week and every week. It's honestly really great.
And like I told my group, like scheduling a time to be like, okay, no, like evenings are my moments. Like I'm going to go in my room and I'm going to cry. Mm-hmm. Makes it to where maybe the next day, if I wouldn't have done that,
yeah, I
may have blew up over something so small and started sobbing hysterically in front of like my mom because she said my pants were dirty. You know what I mean?
100%. Yes.
Because I'm like, I had all that emotion built up. So I had this full meltdown in like Walmart or something. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you would have just like dealt with it,
yeah,
that may not happen. You're still going to have mental breakdowns in the middle of a store sometimes. Okay, guys?
And it's fine.
It happens.
It's fine.
And that's okay. Like,
yeah.
But to take time to yourself to just like let the emotions out.
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite place, I take really long sadness baths. Mm-hmm. Like anytime I'm just like going to have a mental breakdown, I'm like, it's time for a sadness bath. And I'll either like take a shower or take a bath and I just cry. Mm-hmm. And like, it feels really good.
I take sadness drives.
That's so good. Driving and sadness go really well together. Yep. Honestly.
Also, but driving and sobbing don't go well together.
No, those don't do like it. You can just be like sad or like park in like a parking lot and then like sob. That's fine.
I do that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so that's like my go-to thing is just like I schedule my mental breakdown and it's really nice for my schedule. Yeah. Honestly, it keeps me on task.
Yeah. I think my last tip for acknowledging the hurt is to talk to someone you trust. Sometimes saying it out loud to someone who cares can make it feel more manageable. With this one, it's important to voice your expectation. Do you need them to vent? Do you need help with problem solving? Like, let them know what you're needing from them.
Yeah. And I guess like know your audience too.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, if I go to my husband, like I have to be specific. Like am I just venting or like, do I want help?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really, really like that.
Yeah.
I like that tip.
Once we've acknowledged the hurt, the next step is finding meaning in it. This doesn't mean we just have to be grateful for the pain, but we can look at what it's teaching us or how it's shaping us.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think hurt often reveals things that we need to address. Like you were saying earlier, where like it was a deeper thing, like you were crying because something else was happening.
Right.
So this can kind of show us boundaries that we need to set, values that we need to start prioritizing, or even patterns that we need to break.
Yeah.
So have you ever found unexpected meaning in a painful experience?
Wow. Oh. That's such a good question.
It's a big question.
It is a big question.
Yeah.
I mean, of course.
We all have, yeah.
I mean, that's why we say, like, we wouldn't go back in time and change anything. Because the hurt has turned us into who we are today. And, like, oh, there's so many things. I mean, I know I've gone through things that were really hard. And then now as an adult, I've had kids in my life or teenagers that are like, I'm struggling with this, or I'll share my story and they'll be like, wait, really? And it's like, thank you, Jesus. Like,
yeah,
that's why we all go through things and we can help someone else. And that makes it feel so much better to be like, okay, that wasn't for nothing. That wasn't for nothing.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like 5 years later.
So, I mean, yeah,
you're
for
like,
real.
Oh, that wasn't for nothing.
That's like the situation that I'm thinking of in my head right now is like, it was like a good 8 years probably.
Dang.
Which is like,
but you're like, I know how to help with this.
Right.
Yeah. That's really cool.
And even if I don't even have the words or all the advice to be like, this is how you get through it, because it is hard, just being able to be like, yeah, I've went through this, and like that helps them so much to just be like, I know what you're going through right now.
I think that really illustrates like how much power there is in sharing the things that you go through.
Yes.
Like, and not in like an I'm a victim, like,
No.
but just saying like, hi, like I am talking about this from the other side of this problem.
Right.
And like I know what to do now, or like I finally understand why I went through this, or like I can offer you some kind of advice. I think there's so much power in sharing our experiences.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's really cool.
What about you?
It's a hard question. That's a really hard question. You know what? I had like a colorful teenagehood. Is that a word?
Yeah.
It is now.
It is now.
All right. So I just had a very colorful teenagehood. I made some decisions. I, had some stuff happen. And I think that was like just a time period of my life that was a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And some of it was self-inflicted. Some of it wasn't. But like, I think I just went through a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand why. So I really just like, I couldn't see past any of the pain that I was experiencing. But with time and with maturing and with being able to look back with like grown up eyes now instead of teenage ones, I realized that it really pushed me, like that time period pushed me to grow and to learn some really hard life lessons that I wouldn't have learned outside of that time.
Right.
So I think that's the thing about hurt, that like it doesn't always feel fair, and it's not always fair. Like sometimes things just happen and they suck. And it's not always something that we have control over, but we absolutely can control how we respond to it.
Definitely.
And I think that's like a major life skill that I learned in that time period, was like, I can only control what I do.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
And that sucks sometimes.
That's a hard lesson to
It'd
learn.
be nice to control everything.
It would be. Yeah.
I
mean, we've talked about control a lot in our episode with Joe. If you haven't watched that, go back and watch that. It was a great episode. And
it was so good.
It was how to let go of what we can't control. But like, that's a hard topic for a lot of people to swallow, and especially people that like to control things, which I am one of them.
Same.
So it's just, it is hard.
Yeah. It's like you only have power to respond. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that was my like key takeaway from like the toughest years of my life, was just, you're in charge of how you respond. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. We have quick tips for finding meaning in your hurt, because it just helps you get through it.
It does.
It does.
It just helps. It's hard though.
It is hard. Okay, so one obviously is just to like ask yourself questions throughout the process. Like if you're starting to feel hurt, you can say like, figure out maybe why, so we get to the deeper meaning.
Yep.
And then we can say, okay, what can I learn from this? Or how has this experience changed who I am as a person?
Right.
Or like, how can I shift my perspective on this particular issue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think another good tip is just to look for the silver linings, even the small positives, like discovering your own strength. That can really help reframe the experience.
Yeah, that's such a good one. And then this one we've talked about before, but just creating a gratitude list.
Yes.
I think that can feel so hard at first, especially like when you're just really weighed down.
Yeah, when you're
like,
really struggling.
Yeah, like you're really feeling the hurt. But writing down what you have to be grateful for can help you see the bigger picture.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, like we talk about this in church a lot, and Joe actually referenced it, where he was just like, we need to have like that, like celestial idea, right? Of like, this isn't it. That's not what's like, this isn't just it for us. Right. And so like, I think our small issues, sometimes it's like the biggest thing in the world to us, but like in the grand scheme of things, like that's just a little blip of your life.
Right.
Like you're going to remember that year as like the hardest year of your life.
Yep.
But if you have 80 years, right? Like that one little year isn't going to feel like the end of the world anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So I think just being able to be like, you know what? I have so much to be grateful for.
Yeah.
Can really change your perspective.
Right. And I was thinking the other day about we've recently just come into a new year, and like sometimes each year feels like it's getting harder, and sometimes it feels like it's getting better, and all these things. And I was thinking about 2023 was like a good year, and I had a really great year, and 2020 to 2022 was like really rough, right? Which it was for a lot of people. But being able to look at it and go like, no, but like that sucked, that was really hard, and I got through it. is so helpful. And it's like, no, that's so cool. Like, I had the hardest year and I got through it.
I think it's so good too to be able to look back to just be like, man, that was my hardest time.
Yeah.
And somehow I made it through. And so like, what does that tell us for future hard times?
Right.
Like, we can make it through.
Yeah.
Even if it's really, 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 really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the healing process itself. The really fun part.
The best part.
So healing is not a linear process. You don't go from like hurt to like learning how to heal to healed. Like,
nope.
That's not it. Okay.
I wish.
Oh my gosh. Wouldn't that be so nice? You're like, I'm over it. We're good.
It's like, I'm going to deal with this now. 10 seconds later, I'm like,
That would just be life changing.
Wouldn't it?
So we know it definitely doesn't happen overnight.
No.
It'd be great if it did though. But there are things we can do to help the process along. So we're going to kind of talk about that. One thing that's been a huge game changer for me is focusing on self-compassion, which we do talk about in another episode. I think I definitely like have been known to go towards like the more accountable route versus the self-compassion route. But like we do need both.
Right.
So I think having self-compassion, so instead of blaming myself for the hurt or being like, you're so stupid, you did this again, blah, 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 whatever negative thought processes come up, just reminding myself that it is okay to feel like I'm broken sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that's such a good thing for my brain to hear, that like, it's cool. Like, you're going to go cry about this and it's okay. Like, that's an okay thing. So what has been like one of your go-to things for kind of helping yourself move the process along?
Yeah. Well, like I talked about, number one, seek support. Healing doesn't have to be a solo journey. Reach out to a therapist, a support group, or a trusted friend. Yeah. Being able to talk about what you're going through, it helps so much. And it's crazy to think, like, even if it's something someone can't fix, right? It's not something that they can be like, here's the answer, take it, and you'll be great. Because that's not how it works. But just being able to, like, just saying something out loud really helps.
I agree. I feel like my brain, like a different part of my brain turns on when I say it out loud, where it's like, I can either acknowledge how stupid that thing sounds, like, do you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm so upset about this. And I'm like, oh, that's silly. Like,
right.
Like, why am I so upset about that? Okay. Like, let me problem solve this now. Like, let me start my healing journey, because that like feels really silly. Or like, I can just like put it into words and then feel my feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And then going back to like what I was talking about before, when I was really struggling and like my face was breaking out and I was freaking out and all this stuff, saying what had to be said was the hardest thing I've ever done. Like having to sit there and look someone in the face and be like, this is what's going on right now, took forever. Like, it physically would not come out because it was that hard. But once I said it, I have never felt so light in my life. It's crazy how much like words and stuff that you hide will change you. Like, it was crazy. It was like, the biggest relief. It's hard to say stuff. It is hard.
They say the truth will set you free, right?
Will.
Like, and it does. It like takes all of the burden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not easy.
But it's worth it.
It's not easy saying what needs to be said, but it is worth it for sure. Yeah.
That's so cool. I also think that channeling hurt into something tangible, can be super healing. So picking up a new hobby, or a million if you're me, just all of them, or finding something that you only do when you're struggling. It's actually been proven to boost your sense of purpose and your well-being, which is obviously super important during the healing process. Because I think those are kind of the two things, like your sense of purpose and your well-being. Like, those are just like knocked down when you're hurt. Yeah. So I think getting those two things back to you is really helpful.
Another tip, I think, is practicing small acts of care. This could be as simple as taking a walk, or watching your favorite TV show, cooking a healthy meal. Those small steps really add up.
Yeah, they totally do. One of my favorite ones that is the hardest thing on the planet is to learn how to set boundaries and to keep them.
Ooh,
it's such a fun experience.
I love setting boundaries.
We love it so much. So sometimes healing really does mean creating space from people or situations that contribute to the hurt.
Yep.
I do want to kind of like go out on a little tangent here though and say that setting boundaries isn't, well, if you do this and you do that, then you're going to get this and blah, blah, blah. Like that's not what a boundary is. A boundary is like, hey, we're going to have a phone call. If you speak to me like this, I will hang up the phone. Like a boundary is what you will do about it and what's in your control and how you will respond to whatever it is that happens.
Right.
And it's okay for you to like verbally say them, but like you can't be like, you will be in trouble for that's not a boundary. Yeah. So I think that's one of the hardest ones for me is like maintaining boundaries. Yeah. And it's something I'm going to work on this year. It's one of my goals. Put it on my vision board.
Boundaries are so hard.
Yeah.
And I think in our minds, it's somewhat easy to create them.
Yeah.
But actually sticking to them when you're face to face with maybe the person or whatever, so hard.
So hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think like at our core, like nobody wants to hurt other people.
No.
Like I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And like knowing that a boundary that I set will hurt someone's feelings. Yeah. Like that's really hard.
It is.
Yeah.
And our final tip is to embrace the process. Remind yourself that healing is not about just getting over it, but growing through it.
Yeah. That's so good and so difficult sometimes. Yeah. I love it.
So what's the takeaway here? Hurt is something we all experience, but it doesn't have to define us. By acknowledging it, finding meaning, and taking steps to heal, we can turn our pain into growth.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not about rushing the process or forcing yourself to just move on as quickly as possible. Healing takes time, and it is totally okay to give yourself that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. We'd love to hear your stories about how you turn your hurt into healing. What's helped you and what lessons have you learned along the way? Share your own stories or tips with us on Instagram at LightHeartedPod. We also share stuff about our upcoming episodes and behind the scenes content. And if you'd like to hang out with us to get ready to film these episodes, follow us on our Instagram and turn on notifications. We go live when we get ready to film.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay lighthearted. This podcast was recorded on Buzzsprout in West Virginia.